Welcome to Decision Point. Bill Darius Wallace is much more than just an actor. He's a man on a mission. He wants to showcase the stories of great Black Americans to redeem their struggles and suffering for today's generation. Welcome, Darius.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you here in El Paso, and you're here for to actually perform for El Paso Community College and the community, right? What are you going to do tonight?
I will be doing a one-person show on Frederick Douglass. It's called Self-Made Man, The Life of Frederick Douglass. And I'm coming back. I actually came here last year and had a great time and really enjoyed myself, and they brought me back. So.
Right. I hear you perform to standing room only crowds that they actually have to turn you away. So we had to bring you back because people wanted to see you. So that's great.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Now you actually are the writer for this show and other shows. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're doing a show and wrote a show about Frederick Douglass?
Well, there's several reasons. One, I do love to write, and I love to act, and I thought putting those two together, I could help myself work. And in thinking about what kind of show I wanted to do, I started to think about the characters that influenced me throughout life, and Frederick Douglass was definitely one of those characters. My father introduced me to Frederick Douglass when I was a little boy, and I was always fascinated with the pictures, really, of who Frederick Douglass was, and learned a little bit about who he was. But when I became an adult actor, started to study and read about Frederick Douglass, the thing that struck me was his ability to overcome. You have a man who was born in chattel slavery, who virtually taught himself how to read and to write, made a decision to run away, and he did. And he fought back against the slave master. He converted to Christianity when he was on the plantation. He carried a book called The Columbian Orator and the Bible and a hymnal with him when he ran away, and used that for strength. And he achieved a lot of phenomenal things. Started his own newspaper, advised Abraham Lincoln during the Civil War, became the first Black U.S. Marshal, fought for women's rights toward the end of his life. So he was a phenomenal character, and I wanted people to be inspired by his ability to overcome and with the power of the written and spoken word.
Right. So how do you go about portraying all of these, how do you select what event you're going to portray and what is going to be communicated out of that? That's
a very good question, because with Frederick Douglass, he lived until he was 78 years old. He achieved all this phenomenal, this epic, his story was epic. And so I had to find the part of his life that really spoke to me, that I could fit into a small period of time. And so I just began to find those moments that spoke to me and that helped to tell the story that I wanted to tell, which is the power to overcome and what freedom really is. Freedom is not just release from chains, but it's mental freedom, and it's also forgiveness.
Right, yeah.
Forgiveness is freedom.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, as I was watching your performances and so forth, I was reminded of a verse that I know a depiction from the Old Testament in Exodus, where you can take the people out of Egypt, but it's much more difficult to get the Egypt out of the people.
Right, that's right.
And it sounds like that's what you're trying to do is get the Egypt out of the people.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And how do you think that message resonates today? I mean, we don't have slavery anymore, right?
Well, there's people find themselves in their own bondage. It could be a number of things. I performed before I came here for a group of people that are dealing with substance abuse.
Oh, yeah.
And so substance abuse is a form of slavery. Sometimes, slavery is also mental. And then there's a sex trade, there's some slavery in other parts of the world that are similar to the slavery that happened in the United States back in the 1800s. And so I believe that his message is still relevant because of that. But it's universal. It reaches everybody, and it touches everybody on many different levels.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the strongest biblical allusions is the bondage of slavery, of sin,
Right.
and that anything that we're trying to overcome, any besetting issue, whether it be addiction or just basic character issues, is a form of bondage. Absolutely.
That's right.
Is there something from your life that you've had to overcome, struggles that, because you seem to reach down into a deep well of emotion and understanding of your own spirit to portray these characters?
Well, I'll tell you, being an actor has its ups and downs, and it's just, you can, sometimes you never know what the next job is going to be. You're living month to month, and I've been doing this for years, not knowing what's going to happen next.
Right.
You go to many auditions, and there's many turn downs, and so really, my hardest period was when a young actor. I actually spent time homeless in New York City, not for long, but for a period of time, and I remembered some elements to Frederick Douglass's life where he used books to inspire him, and I would go to bookstores and I'd sit in the bookstore and I would read, and I would sort of read and meditated and prayed my way out of that to working and finding work as an actor, and now I have wife and kids and support them with what I do. So
right, and that is definitely a walk of faith day to day.
It is.
I know what that's like.
It is.
Why did you get into acting in the first place?
Well, when I was
you could have done so many other things.
I know, yeah, right. I think about that all the time, and have tried to do other things, and it didn't work out. Acting works out. But when I was a little boy, my father took me to see a movie, and I came back and started kicking and punching, and it was Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, and I wanted to be just like him. And I struggled with reading when I was a kid, and my father was really concerned about that, so he put a biography of Bruce Lee's life on my desk, hoping I would read it. And so one day I got up and I started to work with the book and really wanted to be able to read it, and eventually I did read it and found out he was a child actor, and from that moment on I wanted to be an actor. So.
Right. Now, you are not the typical kind of actor. You really have a lot of depth. You're classically trained. You do Shakespeare. Is that does that inhibit your career? I mean,
well, I tell you, there used to be a time when I thought that it did, and until I learned that really we keep ourselves from our destiny. We keep ourselves from the dreams that we desire. But it is a challenge, though, when you're more message oriented with what you do,
right.
not just on the entertainment side. But there are. I was talking to a Hollywood producer a couple of weeks ago, who, his films, he is always looking for a redemptive quality in it. So,
sure.
Yeah.
It's hard when you have standards.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So what have you learned from which figures have you portrayed, first of all, from history?
Sure. Well, I've portrayed Malcolm X. I've portrayed Martin Luther King, Frederick Douglass, Richard Wright, and Langston Hughes.
Okay.
And what all these men had in common was the transformative power of the written and spoken word. They all, through the course of time, found a pretty strong connection with God, and they weren't afraid to transform. Malcolm X, he had many transformations. He was a youth, he was criminal. He accepted Islam when he was in prison, and he joined the Nation of Islam, but when he went to Mecca, he had another transformation where he saw things more internationally and universally. Martin Luther King, what people don't know, was a troubled child, got into trouble all the time. It wasn't until his father introduced him to Frederick Douglass and other great people that he became inspired. And then, of course, he was inspired by Gandhi, and he too was transformed by the power of the written and spoken word and had a significant spiritual connection to God. And then Frederick Douglass, of course, same thing. He found a deep spirituality that helped him overcome the things that he went through as a slave. So really, all the characters that I do found life in the written spoken word. Richard Wright, who was a phenomenal writer, Langston Hughes, who was a phenomenal poet, and what they found is the same thing that has helped me through life and continues to help me through life, which is a spiritual connection to God, and then also understanding the power of the written and spoken word.
Well, what's your favorite piece out of all the ones you've done?
Right now, it's definitely Frederick Douglass. I love doing Martin Luther King also. It could be because I have been doing him for so long and have done him in schools all around the country for so long. But the story of Frederick Douglass is it's just an amazing story. It truly is the hero's journey. When you see the things that he went through and what he overcame, and you have a man who literally, he wanted to talk to Abraham Lincoln, so he went to the White House and knocked on the front door.
Oh, wow.
And ended up talking to Abraham Lincoln and influencing him during the Civil War to allow for black soldiers to fight in the Civil War for their own freedom. So Frederick Douglass played a role.
That's very significant.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was an amazing man. So.
Well, so what is it that you hope to do by portraying all of these things?
I really want to inspire people to do the very thing that they were put here on earth to do, and to know that they can do the very thing that they were put here on the earth to do. These men have inspired me, and my desire with their lives is to inspire others, and also that people can see some of the things that these men did to achieve the things that they achieved, and the principles that they stood on, and the obstacles that they overcame in order to get to be who they were. So that's my desire. My desire is simply to inspire, inspire people.
Right. Now, is it true, or is it just my perception? It seems like African Americans, Black Americans have a spiritual connection that is very profound, very real, and very consistent, despite the incredible persecution and hardship.
Sure. Well, it comes, the history of African American people, coming from out of Africa. Africa is an amazingly spiritual continent. And a lot of the spirituality that African Americans had, which included singing and dancing, they brought that spirituality over to the United States. The song "Amazing Grace," the melody actually comes from the guy who, I can't remember the guy who actually wrote the song, but the melody itself, he heard Africans singing.
Right.
When the ships were coming over.
Well, he was a slave trader.
Right.
Yeah, right.
That's right. That's right. And so there was always a spiritual connection in that respect. And then when Christianity was introduced to slaves on the plantation, African Americans took some of the ideas in the Bible, like the song "Go Down Moses." It was a code song. It was a code song to let people know that Harriet Tubman was around, because she was called Little Moses.
Oh, right. Sure. I had no idea.
"Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" had spiritual and code significance. "Wade in the Water." It was all about make sure when you run away, you get into the water, and so that the dogs can't smell your scent.
Sure.
The song, I believe, is "Sweet Jesus." On the one hand, they were talking about Jesus, but on the other hand, they were talking about the ship Jesus, which was one of the first slave ships.
Oh, wow.
They wanted to go back home.
Yeah, right.
And so there's always been this spiritual connection that continually has followed us throughout our history here in the United States. And it also has universalized the cause so that it's not really just African Americans, but there were white Americans and others who really got involved with the civil rights movement
Right.
and the cause against slavery.
Right,
So,
yeah. Well, do you think people, well, first let's go set up your clip that we're going to watch, and
Sure.
then I have another, I could ask you questions all day.
Okay.
So we're going to see a clip of you performing some of your work. You want to
Sure.
set that up for us?
Yes, this is the moment when Frederick Douglass comes back to his slave plantation, wants to confront the slave master by asking, why did you do this to me? Why did you treat me the way that you treated me? And he has these memories of some of the things that happened on the plantation where he was raised.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's watch this clip.
Go down, Moses, way down in Egypt, land tell old Pharaoh, let my people go. I've come back to my old slave quarters for 3 reasons. 1, to address my former slave master with choice words before I performed the deed. And 2, to address you. For I hear some of you all are planning on migrating north, thinking there you will experience greater freedom, but I'll assure you, there's no more freedom there than here. Only a different kind of slavery. And 3, to rediscover my purpose. After fighting slavery for some years now that we're still not free, I'm not sure what my purpose is anymore. For 10 or 15 years I have been dragging, as it were, a heavy chain which no strength of mine could break. Not only was I a slave, but I was a slave for life. I might become a husband, a father, an aged man. But through all, from birth to death, from the cradle to the grave, I felt myself doomed to be a slave forever. A free man once told me that thoughts are words naked. Words are thoughts clothed. Action is the ground on which thoughts walk. I'm thoroughly convinced I'm standing here before you today, 1, because of God, and 2, because I've come to understand the power of words, the power of thoughts, and the power of action. To be a slave is unnatural. You will soon see severe training is necessary. But to be free is natural. All you have to do to be free is be. I'd rather myself a bird, a beast, or a thing, but never a slave. There were several instances between my slave master and myself that would lead up to a major confrontation that would change my life forever. Nothing was more humiliating and heart-saddening than the whipping of old Barney. Well, old Barney was a good slave. He was well skilled with horse medicines, and he could remove lampers from horses' mouths. He got presents from me, but he also got stripes as well. For nothing was more intolerable than the mismanagement of my horses. The beds must be softer and cleaner than some of my human cattle. And if Barney, any other slave would have mismanaged my horses, they must stand in front of me, hat in hand, lips sealed, never answering a word. Barney, take off your hat. Yassa? Barney, take off your jacket also. Yeah, yeah, sir. Barney, down on your knees. Excuse me, sir? Down on your knees. My old feeble knees touching the damp cold ground, my head glistening in the sun, my shoulders bare to the wind. Now, here are two men. There's the silvery locks of the slave master and the worn-out brow of old Barney. Master, slave, superior and inferior here, but equals at the bar of God. And the slave master, to whom Barney had given the best years of his life, came forward and laid some 40 lashes on him. He could hardly stand. When the slave master finished with him, though the child I was, it left in me feelings far from peaceful. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long ways from home, a long ways from home.
So that clip really, it was again something that you wrote and you developed over
Yes,
time, right? And
it is.
a very powerful moment. What do you think that signifies? Why did you select that particular moment in his life?
Because what we don't know, a lot of times we see Frederick Douglass, you know, from the pictures as a man already powerful and victorious. We don't really see the vulnerable, conflicted Frederick Douglass, the man, the human being, the broken-hearted Frederick Douglass, who's struggling with anger, struggling with harsh memories, and struggling with coming to terms with his own past and history. And so I wanted to show that so that we can see Frederick Douglass, the man.
The man, yeah. And that I think that is very important, to realize that people are not a highlights reel, that their lives are lives lived just much like yours and mine.
That's right.
Now, what do you think about today's culture of fame and fortune over character and integrity, or is that a misread from my standpoint?
Well, you know, we happen to, well, you know, the connecting it to the show, the show is called Self-Made Man, and the idea of a self-made man today is different than it was back then. The idea of a self-made man today is the self-made millionaire.
Right.
You know? And there's nothing wrong with that. But the idea back during that time of a self-made man, which Frederick Douglass embraced, Abraham Lincoln embraced, was that you continue to transform, and as you transform, you begin to reform society with what you've learned. And each time you transform and you continue to educate yourself and build yourself up, you take whatever you've learned and then you begin to reform society. Is what Self-Made Man was. And so I think we're just living in a time when the idea of what it means to be successful is about fame and fortune. And it's less about the decisions that we make. And I think you know, we can learn from men like Frederick Douglass that you know, our character is more important than, you know, just getting the fame and
Right.
the fortune. So.
Yeah. And how do young people receive your message? Because you perform a lot on college campuses.
Sure, you know, I'm really excited that, you know, whether it's, you know, I have versions for elementary all the way up, that people really seem to be moved and inspired by Frederick Douglass and enlightened by
Right.
Frederick Douglass's life. And so that's always exciting for me.
So they are, the young people are receiving it.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
good.
Very, very happy about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Yes.
Darius.
Likewise, it's been great.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
so do you think that America has drowned out the message of great black Americans like Frederick Douglass? Has achieving fame and fortune eclipsed our biblical values? We'd love to hear some of your thoughts about these things and this interview on Twitter, Facebook, or our website. I really do want to know what you think. Thank you so much for watching.
And as my horses, they must stand in front of me, hat in hand, lips sealed, never answering a word. Barney, take off your hat. Yassa? Barney, take off your jacket also. Yeah, Yassa. Barney, down on your knees. Excuse me, sir? Down on your knees. My old feeble knees touching the damp cold ground, my head glistening in the sun, my shoulders bare to the wind. Now, here are two men. There's the silvery locks of the slave master and the walnut brow of old Barney. Master, slave, superior and inferior here, but equals at the bar of God. And the slave master, to whom Barney had given the best years of his life, came forward and laid some 40 lashes on him. He could hardly stand. When the slave master finished with him, though the child I was, it left in me feelings far from peaceful. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, a long ways from